Welcome, everybody. Hello. Thank you for being here. We are coming at you live in New York. It's Spirit Matters, your daily Bhakti Center spiritual check-in. We're so glad that you're here. My name is Dal Guranga Das, and I'm here with the Chuta Gopi Devi and our live Zoom studio audience who is smiling back at us. Actually, Kimberly's the only one that I know is smiling. Everyone else has got their camera off. I'm assuming that everyone is smiling. Or I'm assuming maybe they're not, which is why they got their camera off. Either way, we love you guys. And wherever you are tuning in, driving on your way to work, dropping off the kids, putting the kids to bed, making dinner, getting the bath ready, doing your yoga workout. What else are people doing? Shopping, jogging, riding bikes, knitting. If any of you guys are out there knitting, maybe some of you guys are, what else do people do while they listen to podcasts? Washing dishes.
I'm a big crocheter. I'm all about that.
Crocheter. I saw there's a new like they built a new community area in the park near my house. People are playing bocce ball, which I think they call lawn bowling, but in bocce ball. I was thinking I need to do that. Some people just woke up. They're like, um, maybe wear your alarm clock. Maybe you listen to us when you're going to sleep. I think it'd be hard to listen to me going to sleep because I'm always like, "Wah!" you know. But whatever you're doing, journaling, basking in the sun, yoga, whatever you're doing, we're glad that you're here tuning in. And this is just our little reminder to you, you're not alone. You are on a spiritual journey, and there are people like you all over the world. They may not like you materially. Maybe they don't look like you or come from the same background or even think the same way you do in every way, shape, or form. But there are people yearning for spiritual connection, and it's a common ground that we all share. Bhagavad Gita says, Vidyavanaya Sampane Brahmani Gavi Hastiti, that whether you're in the body of a human, an animal, or any creature on earth, the spirit soul is present in every living being. And thus, a wise and learned sage sees with samadarshana, equal vision. And we're here to unite us all around the spiritual unity of the soul. That's my preamble. I don't know why I started like that, but anyways, that's why we're here. Good morning. How are you, Achyuta?
I'm blessed.
She's
Here.
blessed. That's a given. That is a given. Today's a special day. Today it's auspicious. Achyuta reminded me that it is the appearance day of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, which is the guru of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is translated the Bhagavad Gita that we read from, and he also is the pioneer of the Bhakti movement in the Western world in the 1960s to today. And his guru is Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And it is also the disappearance day of Achyuta Gopi's family guru, her parents' guru, and her sister's guru, Gaur Govinda Maharaj, passed away in 1966. We celebrate both the appearance and disappearance days of great souls. What's that?
1996.
What did I say?
66.
Oh,
If I thought
19,
so, it would have been a problem.
1996, for those of you who are keeping historical data. And so we celebrate both appearance days and disappearance days because we recognize that it's beautiful when someone comes into this world to bless us with their Sangha association. And it's beautiful when someone departs from this world to take the next step in their eternal journey. And so devotees celebrate, actually. We mourn the loss of someone in our physical association, but we celebrate the next step in their journey. And so we celebrate appearance days and disappearance days in Bhakti. That's today. Okay, so we've been reading the Bhagavad Gita. We're going to keep it rolling here. We are reading the Bhagavad Gita, and we're in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And do you want me to set it up today, Achyuta, or you want to? We've got Gaur Govinda Maharaj, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and Bhagavad Gita all to choose from.
I think we go with Bhagavad Gita and it'll make everybody happy.
And we're going with door number 1, Bhagavad Gita.
Makes everybody happy.
Makes everybody happy. Makes everybody happy. Okay, we've been perusing, as Achyuta Gopi mentioned yesterday, our word of the week, perusing through the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. We've we've gotten we got up to 7 and 8 yesterday and 9. I don't know if we read verse 10, but verse 10 is a great verse. And I wanted to also read and share that. Where did we leave off yesterday? Anybody want to give a reminder? Put it in the chat. Do you remember, Achuta?
We were talking about whenever and wherever means whenever in our lives we need the supreme person. The supreme person will show up,
Got it.
and that uh, we can associate with the supreme person.
We're trying, folks. We are trying.
We're trying. We're getting here. We're in it. We're in it. Whenever and wherever actually means that whenever and wherever in our lives there is a need, um, then the Lord shows up. And if the Lord has shown up, it is because the Lord has seen fit. The Lord has seen that there is a need in our lives, and that
Mm,
need is important. Sometimes we can kind of feel as though what would make God show up in my life? And you
yeah.
were speaking about Akila Rasamrita Murti
Mm,
and Krishna's ability to love everyone in exactly the way that they need to be loved, with the same importance that everybody needs to be loved with. So you never feel as though, oh yeah, God is loving me, but also, what about that person over there? You don't feel left out when it comes to Krishna's love.
mm. Yeah. Um, Bada Hariprabhu, one of our kirtan heroes, um, many years ago came and did a kirtan at the Bhakti Center, and he spoke briefly beforehand, and he was talking about the idea of humility. You know, we have that verse, Trinadapi Sunichina Taroriva Sahishtana Amanina Manadina Kirtaniya Sada Hari Shuchitani Mahaprabhu composed this verse that one should be humble like the blade of grass, tolerant like a tree, um, devoid of the of seeking and grabbing respect and prestige from others, but willing to give all respect to everyone. And in that state of mind, one can kirtaniya sadahari, chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. One can um, can keep the holy name of the Lord close to their heart. And he was sharing that, like, because we were in New York, and sometimes New York has this sort of like I got this attitude, and you can call it New York, or you can call it just like anybody with a false ego, which is, I think, all 7 billion people on the planet have some degree of false ego. Is why we're here. And the idea of like sometimes the inability or challenge to admit when we're struggling, or to admit when I'm feeling a little lost or disconnected. Um, the feeling, and it can happen a lot specifically with men in our culture, although it's across the board. There was a friend of mine produced this documentary in Australia called Man Up, and it's about the suicide epidemic in Australia, specifically among men who have this like tough men mentality, like to not share their struggles. And I was also just last night, there was this award in the NFL, the National Football League in America. Every year they award what they call the Man of the Year award, where they award a player not for their on the field activities, but for their off the field activities. They have foundations and nonprofit organizations, and the person who won had set up a foundation because his brother had committed suicide. And so he set up a foundation that he made a promise that one life taken to save millions. And it was the idea of creating awareness for people to talk about their struggles more often. And this documentary in Australia was called Man Up, because there's like this sort of like bravado, this sort of stereotype of like man up, and be a man, and don't struggle or keep it all together. Um, and so he was trying to, it's about trying to break that stereotype and describing how people need places to share their struggles and admit. And sometimes it's hard for us to um it's hard for us to admit when we're going through or struggling something, rather when it's reaching out to a friend or reaching out to a helpline or whatever that might be. And so I think that we live in a world and a culture where it's really hard to admit that we are struggling. And I think that this access point in the Bhagavad Gita is Krishna mentioning, like, you can tell me, you know, you can you it's hard to help somebody. It's like it's hard to wake someone who's pretending to be asleep, you know? It's hard to help somebody who thinks that they've got it all together, or it's hard to help somebody who's um not yeah, who it's like admitting that we're struggling is a first step towards inviting Krishna and others into our life. Some people in our chat here are mentioning that since we've brought up the concept of suicide, please mention helpline. In America, there's the new 988 number. I don't know what that number is. But if you're seeking help in need of struggle, please reach out, contact somebody, call a helpline. People are available. Um, but bringing it all the way back from that space, I was just thinking that whenever and wherever and whenever there's a decline in religious practice, that I think it's back to what Buddha Harpa was saying, is that whenever whenever we're willing to admit that we need a little bit of help, like in the 12-step recovery process, the first step is just admitting that we're powerless over whatever it is that has a grip on us. That's the first step. And I think that a big part of spiritual life is just learning to let our guard down a little bit in order to invite a little sunshine in and a little help. And Krishna saying, I'll be that sunshine. I'll be that sign. Krishna Surya Sama Maya Hoya Andakar. Krishna's like the sun. And so I was just appreciating, for me, especially like myself, I'm going to try to wrap this up because I think I've been talking for a long time. For me, like, especially like, and maybe, you also Chuta, like we're in leadership positions. I'm the executive director of the Bhakti Center. You're leading pilgrimages and you are, sharing spiritual wisdom with, thousands of people online. And sometimes there can also be space for leaders to think that I've got to hold it together for the people that I am ministering to or sharing to. And we create these spaces, whether it's I'm the head of a family, or I'm the head of a spiritual community, or I'm the head of a company, or I'm sort of like the mature one in my group of friends. I'm just in a spiritual community and we're supposed to kind of all have things together. And I think Krishna is mentioning that wherever and whenever, meaning that it takes place all over the place. And nobody's got it all together all the time. And admitting that we're struggling, or admitting, even if it's not even like struggling like mental health or physical health or whatever, but just like admitting that I need continuous lifting up and guidance, that I want to be placed in the hands of my divine, loving, higher power, is sort of our part, and then Krishna steps in and does the rest.
I think there's something to be said for perspective. We put a lot of emphasis on this all together thing. And to be honest, I'm not sure what that looks like actually. Like what does that really look like? Does that look like I remember when I was feeling like I was having such like relationship issues. Somebody told me once, they were saying, you know, you wouldn't be having these issues if you were just more busy. So like if you cleaned more or whatever, like you wouldn't have those issues. And I remember thinking, how is me cleaning my kitchen going to fix the communication issues that I'm having with a partner? Like it sometimes
Mm.
we have such a very, very skewed perspective of things. People are saying, what kind of advice is that? But it's the kind of advice people give all the time. It's the kind of advice people give people all the time for everything. Oh, you're single? If you just need to like love yourself more. And it's like, how is internalizing everything more going to help me communicate with another potential person out there. Yes, there are some ways, but you could know yourself completely, and that still might not be that, like, it's the advice that people give people all the time. It's exactly the advice that comes. Um, and so, it's advice that comes with everything. It's like, oh my gosh, what do I do if I'm feeling depressed? It's like, well, you know, if you just were to like pray it away, if you prayed good enough, this wouldn't be happening to you. And I think Bhagavad Gita is such a wonderful, wonderful example of how that is not true. And I really love how Krishna brings it back to everyone, from Lord Brahma down to an ant, is struggling with the six senses, which include the mind. So altogether means that we're going to struggle.
Mm.
Altogether means that there are going to be mental struggles. There are going to be internal conflicts. There are going to be external conflicts. That is the fine print of this material world.
Mm.
So I think sometimes we have this view of what altogether looks like. My house clean or dirty will not change my communication with others, will not change my compassion and my interaction with others. It might reflect an internal mental state, maybe, but I still have to work on the communication with others.
Mm.
I've still got to reach out with others. And so I think that sometimes we have such a very, very skewed perspective on what all together looks like. I have to have it all
Mm.
together because I'm a spiritual leader. What does that mean? Mother Teresa said this is a lonely road.
Mm.
You can feel lonely. You have this despair. Rumi wrote poetry upon poetry upon poetry about the despair on the spiritual path that one can feel. Arjuna is feeling an intense despair.
Mm.
Why do we think that that should never occur? Why do we think that it is going to be exempt in spiritual circles when every saint, Jesus, felt such a despair and a longing, an intense yearning? So, why do we think that any of these anguishes are somehow going to miss us or not have an effect on us? I think the first thing is to realize that it is absolutely and completely natural. More than normal, it is natural. It is a natural effect of being an embodied spirit soul to have these mental struggles, physical struggles, emotional struggles. They're going to happen. It is as natural as sweating in the summertime. We don't berate ourselves for it. I mean, some of us spend a lot of time trying to like cover it up and use antiperspirants and stop it from happening, but it doesn't stop. And then we don't berate ourselves for like, oh my God, look at you, you're sweating again. It's like, well, that's kind of the natural function of my body. I can't help that. And so I think sometimes we have to really be, like you said, honest and realize that this is a natural function of my body. Recently, I've been having conversations with my sister, and I was like, you know what? I'm starting to understand body dysmorphia in a very different way. And so sometimes she's like, how are you feeling? And I'm like, I'm having that body dysmorphia again, but it's literally, I'm an embodied spirit soul, and my soul is trying to conform itself to all this stuff, and it's not feeling right. And it actually is a body issue. We're in these bodies now, subject to all the things that come along with these bodies. And sometimes we don't feel right because our souls are much more free, vast, all encompassing than these bodies can accommodate. And so I think that
Mm.
sometimes we have to understand just factually, okay, this is happening. We don't necessarily have to feel bad about it or get down on ourselves about it, but sometimes just understanding the diagnosis helps. Like sometimes, when you go to the doctor and something's been wrong and finally you get that diagnosis, here's what it is. We haven't even started to fix the problem, but there's some relief just from acknowledging what the situation is. So we can tap in and really lean into that relief instead of feeling bad that it's coming up, leaning into the relief of, at least now I acknowledge what's happening. I am a
Yeah.
soul having this material body experience. There's so much that is coming along with it. So sometimes we have to just take it one day at a time, one moment, 1 hour at a time. But we can lean into just even acknowledging that there is a diagnosis and that Krishna understands that diagnosis.
Yeah, you mentioned I looked up that verse for Bhagavad Gita. It's in the 15th chapter, verse 7. Mamai vangso jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana mana sastan indriyani prakriti stani karshati. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. And so there's a long purport that Srila Prabhupada gives a commentary, but a couple sentences that he reads is the living entities, not only human beings and the cats and dogs, but even the great controllers of the material world are all parts and parcels of the Supreme. They are all eternal, not temporary manifestations. So we are eternal. That's that soul that's in the body. Then he mentions the word karshati, the Sanskrit word struggling or grappling hard, is very significant. The conditioned soul is bound up as though shackled by iron chains. They are bound up by the false ego, and the mind is the chief agent which is driving them in this material existence. So I think that we're really um, very much encapsulate what you were sharing, or you very much encapsulated what Prabhupada sharing here when you were speaking about your sister and that experience of like body dysmorphia of like, I'm a spirit soul that is now experiencing life through this distorted lens of a material body and a material mind. And we're struggling, or probably use the word grappling hard with this. And I think that what happens is a lot of times we identify with the struggle. Like, that's me. I am whatever, as opposed to like, we are all in this, compromised situation, it's we've all been, we're all approaching in some sort of spiritual handicap, where we're trying to like perform spiritual life with like sincere weights on our shoulders and shackles on our legs and like massive uh challenges, just being in the material world. And I think that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, like as you said, to feel like I just got it all together, without realizing that all of us are dealing with that, and it never goes away. Someone who's in Alcoholics Anonymous, they're 30 years in the program, 30 years sober, they still consider themselves an alcoholic, and they'll still go to a meeting and say, I'm one drink away from a total setback. And I think that we in spiritual circles, we kind of feel like people like past the point of no return, where like, I am never going to make a mistake, or that person is flawless from here on out. And it's just not the case. We all are struggling with the six senses, including the mind. And Krishna's inviting us back to where we are in the fourth chapter. Wherever and whenever and wherever there's a decline in dharma, meaning even in your life, I'm right there to dive in. Don't be afraid to admit it. And so that's why we're here with each other. A big part of us being here in this podcast is to give ourselves. I was just a friend called me yesterday. They were upset about something and they didn't know if they were allowed to be upset, because it's just like, I shouldn't be feeling, you talk about feeling angry, giving up. Then the very next verse of what I wanted to read in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, is about giving up, becoming freed from attachment, fear, and anger. So it's like, I'm not supposed to feel angry as a devotee, but I'm angry about something. And I just think that we don't give ourselves permissions to live our human experience enough while we're practicing bhakti. And so a big part of us being here is just to say, we see you, we love you. And we're all having our experiences of life. We're allowed to struggle on our spiritual path. We are allowed to make mistakes. We're allowed to be sincere and keep moving forward. And our honesty and the humility that comes from it replace my defensiveness and my shame and my guilt with humility and grace. And Krishna will be right there to swoop us up. And we're here to swoop you up also. And thank you for swooping me up. We have hit our time today. And we're going to turn it over to Kimberly to take some takeaways for us. And we'll have some closing words. What do you got for us, Kimberly?
It's okay not to be okay. It's
There you go.
it's in the fine print of this material world to struggle and is as natural as sweating in the summer. Man up and be willing to admit that we need a little help and guidance sometimes. And Krishna is like the sun, so let's invite that sunshine in. Thank you.
Thank you. Achucha, what you got for us?
Just that I want to remember to be able to hold that space the way I have wanted others to hold that space for me, to be able to just openly kind of allow people to express their human experience. Because sometimes, especially as a leader, not only do you feel like you have to have it all together, but you have to feel like you have to give an answer. And sometimes that answer is to listen for a second and to really think about, okay, where am I coming from with this answer? Is fixing this person's problem a jump from my ego? Am I really in it, feeling it with them? Because Vaishnavas are paraduka dukhi, you know, they're gonna really intensely feel the sadness of others. Is it coming from there? Is it coming from a desire to just be an instrument of Krishna's mercy? So it's for me to really hold space for others, and then when I think about my responses for others and myself, where are those responses coming from? How am I responding to these situations, and how am I meeting others and myself in those places when we have rough days?
Beautiful. Martha put no more sunblock. Blocking the sun, no more blocking the sun. I appreciate that. What are the ways I'm blocking the sun with my own ego? I'm gonna walk away with that. Where can I admit to myself the places that I could use a little help? I think there's a beautiful little takeaway for me. Thank you so much, Achyuta, for being you, for sharing so beautifully and wonderfully. Thank you all for listening here. This week, we've been talking about India pilgrimage in the fall. Please check it out, bhakticenter.org. We've got an India pilgrimage coming up, storytelling, beautiful temples, exotic places. Achyuta will be there, leading kirtans and telling stories. Please check it out on our website, bhakticenter.org. If you'd like to take a deeper dive into this philosophical, spiritual foundations of Bhakti Yoga and Vedic teachings, check out Awakening the Self, which I'm leading at the end of this month, an online 6-week learning journey. Would love to have you take it with me. It's open to everyone. And I'm also leading a online men's group. You're reading Yoga and Dark Night of the Soul, Growing Bhakti with the Bhakti Center. You can check it out in our link next. It starts next week on Wednesdays, 10 a.m. Eastern time. So please check those things out. We'd love to have you connect with us more and more. Thank you for being you. And if you haven't already, I'm going to keep saying this, go leave us 5-star reviews, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else. We appreciate it a lot. We love hearing from you guys. Please be well. We are taking a break over the weekend. We don't podcast over the weekend. We'll be back on Monday, and we'll see you then. Take care. Bye-bye.